Welcome to Sports Geek Q&A. Here's your host, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and you're listening to Sports Geek Q&A. Remember, you can send in your questions in any of these ways. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/questions. You can send me something via Twitter at Sean Callanan. You can slide in the DMs and ask a question. You can go to my Facebook page, facebook.com/Sean Callanan Speaks, or Sports Geek. Look up Sports Geek on Facebook. Or you can send me an email, sean@sportsgeekhq.com, or you can ask me in real life. I will take your question and put it on one of these Q&A episodes. Don't forget, you can support our podcasting and newsletter efforts via Patreon. Simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. You can check out the show notes on this episode for all business supporters in Patreon. Please check out their links and thank you very much for supporting our podcasting and newsletter efforts. Question 1 comes from a good friend of mine, Amir Zanozi from Zoomf. Where are you seeing the sports partnership landscape going? Well, Amir, good question, and I look forward to actually discussing this with you because every time we have a chat is also very good around this topic. For me, I think more and more sponsors are moving more and more around conversion and data acquisition and customer acquisition and real results. And that is why I'm so bullish on digital to dollars. That's why my goal for the industry is for digital to be the number one revenue source for sports by 2030. I truly believe that because I think sports teams do have right now active and engaged customer bases or fan bases, as we call them in sport, far more engaged than regular brands. You know, if you're a bank or a loan vendor or a car dealer, you know, you don't have such avid, engaged fans as sports teams and leagues do. So I think most brands and partners entering the space will start getting to the pointy end of how can you help us acquire a customer? How can you help us engage a customer? How can you help us engage our customers? And you can do that very well via digital. So this is where I think the important point of understanding the value of what you're doing in the digital space is understanding the value of what you're producing from a socials point of view and the value that represents to those brands. They have a hard time reaching those social audiences. The algorithm is affecting them the most. And then the other part is how can the sports team or league best activate and recruit and acquire those customers for the brand. And that's where I think the Know Your Pitch pillar kicks in for digital to dollars. Rather than getting the campaign or getting the digital campaign from a external agency of the brand and they say, can you please run this campaign for us? They want to get, more people to sign up for their energy retailer or more people to swap over to their telco and the campaign falls flat. Nobody wins. Whereas I think there's a massive opportunity in the sports partnership space to bring that work in-house, to bring that work into the team and league environment and activate that appropriately and deliver on results because I think that's where we're headed. It's all about results. It's going to be less about the brand awareness piece. I think there still will be people buying logos on jerseys and LED signs at stadiums and those kind of things. But the reason I think digital has so much upside is it's infinite. There's only so many spots in a stadium that can be filled. Even with LED, we can swap out the sponsor signage as many times as we like, but there is a limit. There's no limit to digital. So I think there's a real big opportunity for sports to understand that space and show how they can deliver results, but making sure that part of the story is telling the sponsor, we can't just run this campaign for you if your fans don't know who you are. So that brand building piece, the branded content piece, making sure the fans have an introduction to your brand is really important, and it's mandatory. You can't just do the campaign by itself. So tying those two pieces together, that's exactly what we do with digital to dollars. I do think there's going to be some commercial folk that are going to get burned by just producing or just offering results, or not tackling that component of the partnership. I think that's going to be really important going forward. Question 2 was triggered off an article that I shared on LinkedIn, and Pat Galloway gave me a call for a follow-up article. And his question was, what do I think about the push for smaller boutique stadiums? And it's very much the debate, a smaller stadium versus a bigger stadium. I will have shared the links to this article by the time this episode goes out. But the main theme from my point of view in comparing the small versus the big stadium, and I guess in this region, we've seen some recent cricket matches, Big Bash matches in large stadiums like the MCG with only 13 or 14,000 people, which makes for a really poor experience. 13,000 people in a 100,000 seat stadium doesn't look great, both on TV, and it's not a great experience in stadium. And for me, the push weather doesn't really matter. The stadium size isn't so much the matter. I think the challenge in front of all stadium operators and sports in general is making sure the fan experience is the best one there, and how you go about that. And I guess the reason for smaller boutique stadiums, it potentially offers that. You've got less people to cater for, less pressure to fill cavernous stadiums, and then you can provide a really engaging experience. So I think that's the main reason. I mean, we're seeing trends, in the UK, in Premier League, in smaller stadiums. Obviously, lucky enough to tour stadiums like Bank of America, where LAFC play. That smaller stadium is easier to fill, and then the atmosphere of that stadium is amazing. So that's where I think there is a trend. I think, unfortunately, in the Australian market, there's issues around who pays, because most of the stadiums are paid for by government. They always seem to roll up the size of the stadium to the biggest event. So they're always building the stadium to cater for the grand final or a international match and those kind of things, or an international concert, which might happen 5 to 6 times a year. But there might be 50 to 60 more content days or more that don't fill it. So it is that balance. I think if they were more privately owned stadiums, that have also then all the opportunities to commercialise them with different areas, I think it would be very different. So keeping an eye on what Lou Sticker and his team are doing at Western United and building their own stadium for Western United down Geelong Way, or down towards Geelong. It will be interesting to see how that develops. But for mine, the debate around small and big stadiums always comes back to fan experience. Some of that will be technology and what it can offer, but also it just can be, what is the experience like? What is the food like? What is the beer available? How do you cater for families? How easy is it to get in and out of the stadium? I think they're more important than the actual size. The size is a starting point to say what's the optimum size from a revenue point of view and a fan experience point of view. The last question came from Sally at a recent conference called Pause Fest. She asked me, what work do I like doing? Which is a great question. Had a really good discussion about the different work that people do, and sort of dove on this topic with Sally. I guess from my point of view, I think part of my DNA, my dad was a teacher for many, many years. I think I have some of his genes, obviously, but obviously, so I like the teaching component. So I like running workshops and walking people through the digital to dollars process, or whether that's in a small group or whether it's online in a webinar, or if it's in a large group at a conference like Seat, where I did a digital dollars workshop with 300 people. I really enjoyed that. I enjoy going up on stage. I enjoy speaking or moderating. So if anyone's got a conference or wants a speaker on all things digital and fan engagement and opportunities in the space, I've got a few different keynotes in that space. I really do enjoy speaking. So mostly it is that piece of work, doing those workshops and helping people in that training piece. But then when I'm talking about like client work and those kind of workshops that we do, some of the ones that I like the best are diving in on your content pillars and what you want to do, and then how you go about doing it. So helping unlock some really cool creative ideas. I don't necessarily have to be the one that comes up with the idea. As long as the room comes up with the idea, I get a massive buzz out of it. And then what I like to do with those ideas is then bring that commercial lens and that data lens to it to go, that's a really cool idea. This is how we pitch it to commercial. This is how we pitch it to the ticketing and membership folk. Here's how you get multiple outcomes out of the cool idea. So you're not just content for content's sake. So I really enjoy when I'm either doing those workshops or on calls with clients, sort of diving in on what can we do next that will impress everybody, but mainly impress our fans, but also widening the scope for the commercial for the content team to make sure that there's some real commercial value coming out of it. So thank you very much, Sally. I did hit on a few of the same beats there of our conversation at Pause Fest, but thank you very much. I appreciate being able to share it here on the Q&A podcast. Thanks again to Amir and Pat and Sally for the questions. Remember, you can send in your question anytime on any of my social channels at Sean Callanan will get me, or you can send me an email, sean@sportsgeekhq.com. I'd love your support on Patreon. Thank you for those who have supported the Patreon campaign. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon to pledge your monthly support for as little as $4. If you get value from these episodes and the regular podcasts and the newsletters, and you think it's worth $4 a month, I'd really appreciate it. Until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
You can reach Sean Callanan via email at sean@sportsgeekhq.com. Find out more about Sports Geek's digital to dollars process at digitaltodollars.com. Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.